Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Kayla, and we have episode 2 of the Author Tool Belt, where we're going to be focusing on alphas, betas, and arcs. What are they? What happens with them? And why are they important? Pros and cons, and all of that. Yes, Anitha, I know we are late. Better late than never. So I'm just going to have my lovely guests go around, introduce themselves. Why don't we start with you, James?
Hi, everybody. I am James Dulin. My debut, No Heart for a Thief, came out in January. Actually, I shared a launch date with Tiago's second book. I also I co-host the Fantasy Review podcast, and we release a episode every other Tuesday. So that's a little bit about me.
Andrew, you can go.
My turn? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Andrew D. Meredith. I am the author of now 4 books. Deathless Beast is book 1 in the Collation saga. The sequel is Bone Shroud. Right there. Book 3 will be coming out in this summer. And then I also have my Needle and Leaf series, which starts with Thrice here. So it's a Slavic fantasy. And then Fourscore just came out about a month ago, and that's the sequel to Thrice. And I will have the culmination of that series next year.
Awesome. So I'm Chag Abdallah, the author of The Ashes of Labyrinth. Includes A Touch of Light, the prequel novella, Prelude to Ashes, and my wife just saved me here. I finally have a physical copy of Shade of Madness. Since James picked the same release date, we've been rivals ever since. So
It's a bitter feud.
yeah. No, but yeah, happy to be here as always, and yeah, excited for the conversation.
All right. Well, why don't we dive in with actually, before we do that, please go check out everyone's channels, their websites. All the links will be in the descriptions below. And let's dive in with alphas. Can we get a definition of what is the alpha stage?
So the term alpha stage comes from like programming, when you're doing very early dev work where you've got some code in and you need to figure out if the code actually works. So in the case of books, you've just finished your first draft and you need someone to bounce your books off of, but it's by no means finished. But you need, other professionals, a dev editor, people who can actually look under the hood and make sure that the engine's actually running. So the alpha reader is the pre-beta. You're not giving it to somebody as a consumer. You're giving it to somebody as a does this actually work, or yeah, not even an enjoyment. Obviously, there's enjoyment involved, but it isn't when you're handing it to an alpha reader, they aren't looking at it in terms of whether they would actually want to buy the book. It's just a matter of whether it's garbage or not.
Just someone's perspective other than your own.
Correct. And and it can be really important. It's really important for me to know that I didn't completely fall on my face.
Fair enough. So, at what point is your book, your drafts ready for the alpha stage, the alpha reading?
For
And
me, I held off until I do a 0 draft and then I do a first draft. I do an alpha after the first draft. At least I did with my sequel, which is not out yet. But that 0 draft is really just for me. That is more of a blueprint, and there's going to be way too much that I'm not showing anybody in there. So I'm waiting until I can do at least one run through and make sure at least some of the plot holes are plugged.
Out of curiosity, do you do a really extensive 0 draft? Like, is it like a big old 10,000 word 0 draft,
yeah.
Or is it just an outline?
No, my 0 draft is 100% the book, but I do not go back and edit when I'm writing. Yeah. So it's a very messy. Characters' names have changed. Yeah. Different aspects of them have changed throughout. Lots of things don't connect. but it's the whole 100,000 words plus.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same as James. Exactly the same. But my alpha reader is usually my editor. So I try to do like a little bit of self editing, you know, in the first draft. I do try and edit it a little bit, a little more heavily, just so it's ready to go to the editor. So yeah, but my process is the same as James. I write like the zero draft that doesn't make sense. Stuff changes. If someone reads it, they won't be able to make sense of what's going on. Like not even close. And then you go back and you fix it.
What about you, Andrew?
I write my first draft and then do just a cursory polish to make sure that I've got all of the typos I can catch, which are not all of them. As you can tell by any time I message you with my fingers, it's bad. But and then I have 2 alpha readers that I send it to. One that I can then bounce off world building stuff off of, and then another one who tells me whether she doesn't care if the story's garbage or not. She loves everything I write, so it's just enough. But she'll tell me when something doesn't work. But at the exact same time, I do a full read out loud to my wife. And so she sits and does color by number, and I sit there and I'm editing. And so I'm stopping every other line to fix a line, and I'll read it out loud to her so that I can make sure that everything's flowing well. And, if she's nodding off early on in the reading session, it means something went wrong. If it's late in the session, that's just because my dulcet tones pushed her to sleep. But when she goes to sleep, sometimes I'll keep reading for like an hour out loud. I know she's out. And then I have to go back and read it to her again, but at least I got to read that chapter a couple times. So, and then I take all of those alpha readers' notes and my notes from that polish, so that I can hand it off for a longer period of time. So I the longer you can run any level of these, the better. Like if you can give it away to an alpha reader for 2-3 months, that's great, because then you forget about it and you have much fresher eyes when you come back to it. But you can't always do that with alpha reader. You're kind of in the midst. Your arms are dirty while you're trying to get it past alpha, because if you aren't then handing it off to another stage past that, which I'm sure we'll talk about soon, if you don't hand it off in a way that you feel at least half satisfied with what you've sent out to later readers, you're gonna be just fretting over it the whole time. You will anyway. But
you said something interesting. Sorry, go ahead, James. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, with No Heart for a Thief, my first time around, I didn't know what an alpha reader was, but I kind of used one. I was already telling myself that this was not going to be something I published. This is just, I wanted to see if I could do it. And so every 6 to 7 chapters I sent off to a friend just to say, like, is this anything? And then he kind of read along as I finished the book. So in a way, he was doing that work for me as well of, is this anything to move forward with? Does this make any kind of sense? Is this entertaining in any way? And so I'd say getting an alpha reader also probably depends on what are you trying to do with your book? Are you definitely going to try to publish this? Or is this just something you're looking to get feedback on as a creative project? And so I think with all of these steps, you got to take into account what kind of project are you doing? Is this for yourself? Is this for others? Who is the audience? And then that feeds into the process of how many people do you need along the way to help you out.
Yeah. And, to add to that too, one, I would go back to definition and say that just remember that alpha is a broad term. Yep. It's the same term used, like I said, for dev editor and your writers group. Like that's when your writers group, if you have one, which not everybody has, you're living in the middle of nowhere, you're going to have to find an alpha reader online. Fortunately, we have an online community, but, knowing the terms in your head when you're sending it out also helps set you up for what kind of feedback you're going to get, right, James?
Yeah.
That if you're not ever looking to get edited, you're going to be less discouraged by an early reader, really just trashing all over it. But if you're like, this is alpha, trash it all you want, I got to fix this thing anyway. Mm-hmm. That's a great mindset to have compared to later on when you're like, I thought this was ready. It's as if it's only your first draft, it's not ready, no matter what. And and later on you are going to have a chance to give it to people who are going to tell you whether you didn't polish it enough. So
I have two kind of points here. First of all, you actually check for typos before you send it out to alphas.
I read through and I fix whatever I can. So that because I mean I'm all about removing as many possible hurdles as possible, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm not line editing. I'm not going by and going, is this verb
Yeah.
in the right spot? One, I just don't do that. So it's amazing that I sell anything. But because I trust the process to slowly polish it. But like, okay, we're gonna put more metaphors in here. When you're putting a rock into a tumbler, right? You're gonna put rough rocks in, but you got to get some of it. You got to start with a higher grit to get it polished, and I can do some of that polishing myself while I'm going.
Sure,
So
yeah.
every time it comes back to me, I'm doing editing. Yeah, I try to polish it enough because I have some people in my later stages that will do typo fixes, even though I ask them not to, and I know they just will. And so I don't want them to have to go through that if I can fix enough of it. I know I'm going to get free editing out of it, and so I might as well take some of the heat off of them. So
I just brought that point up because I think it's interesting to mention what to expect. I'm sorry, and I think a lot of alpha and beta readers aren't always sure what the author actually wants, and maybe that's why they pick up typos, because it's the easy thing to pick up, right? But there are 3 different kinds of editing that authors get to know a lot, which is developmental, line editing, as you said, and copy editing, right? So I think as like from the other perspective, not from the author's perspective, as alpha readers, I think that's important to know, because the authors are looking for something, and usually it's the developmental part, right? Which is the story working? Are the characters working? Did I set this up properly? Do I need more foreshadowing? Do I need to go deeper into characters? How are the relationships and all that? I think that's what I ask for in alpha reads, at least. And that's why usually, to me, it's the editor or another author, right? Because I think it's easier, or a reader who's familiar with that, and they'll be looking for that. So they'll know what to look for, I guess. But I think that's an important distinction to have. Otherwise, you're kind of like sending out something that's probably painful for the person to read, because it's not polished. It's very rough.
Yeah.
And you might not get the feedback that you're expecting as well. So communication beforehand is certainly essential.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, is the communication. I know this would be going into the later stages, but I am one of those people who is like, do you want me to keep track of typos in your arc or not? Do you want me to ignore them? I will. But if you want me to track them, I will also do that. It's important to ask those questions so you know what the readers or authors are looking for. You won't know unless you ask, right?
Yeah.
So you all mentioned little hints as to who reads the alphas. Can you talk a little bit more about who reads them? How do you find those people? And how do you convince them to, like in Andrew's case, sit and listen or read it?
In Andrew's case, you married them, I'm guessing?
Yeah. Bake bread. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, living in Brazil, I hired an editor because people don't speak English here, so it's really hard. Like, for your first book, when no one knows you, when you don't know anyone either, it's kind of hard. But there are resources. There are like Facebook groups and Discord channels of people who will be willing to take a look at your work. If you're an active member of that community, and are also willing to help others. It doesn't have to be an exchange necessarily, but just be an active part of the community and be willing to help everyone out, I think is how you start to break into it. Because I remember, like, when I was starting out, one of the scariest things is, how am I going to find beta readers? How am I going to find reviewers? How am I going to find arc readers, everything. So, it comes with time, I guess, but if you're looking to kind of break in, there are these resources like Facebook groups and Discord channels, which is where I'd start.
Yeah.
Or just hire an editor like I did, if you can.
My alpha reader for my second book ended up being a beta reader for my first book. After she beta read for me the first time around, we actually started to have a pen pal kind of relationship, and we talked to each other about each other's projects. Um, and because we were able to build that relationship and that kind of trust, she became somebody that I respect her opinion, and I'm interested to see what she thinks about the next stage of my books. And so that's how I did it the second time around. But the first time it was just a friend to give some feedback. Um, it's I agree with Andrew. If you can have somebody who has more of a professional eye and is able to give you some understanding apart from enjoyment, but also some understanding of story structure and character development and things like that, where they can point out those essential things and where you might need to pay more attention, that's much more helpful. But if all you have is a friend who's willing to read your work before it's anywhere worthy of reading, and that use that good friend.
Yeah, I think alpha is harder to find because of the technical aspect of it, and because it does have more of a tit for tat attachment to it. You can't cattle call alpha readers, mostly because you need focused information, right? Compared to later stages, you can have a huge body of readers, but a huge body of readers early on can actually be, it was probably damaging more than anything. So there's because you need to know how to how to fix the big issues, not how you don't need too many cooks in the kitchen, right? And so it's harder to find alpha readers, I think, or at least to cultivate them, and you got to keep them around.
Hope they stick around for the next one, right? So in that case, what type of feedback should authors be looking for in the alpha stage? Does it vary from author to author, from reader to reader, or is there a general guideline that is recommended? James, you can go ahead.
Yeah.
I think that I would say that much like editing, the stages of alpha, beta, and arc go from very broad and wide to much more detailed. So in an alpha read, and this might differ from person to person, but I'm looking for overall feel. I'm looking for wide arcs. I'm looking for understanding of if these main things are working to tell the story. I'm not looking for, I really like this exact sentence of dialogue right here. I'm looking for the broad picture. With beta, it gets a little bit more detailed, and with arc, it even gets more detailed. So you're really looking to hone in kind of a wide scale, kind of panning in.
Yeah. And, whether but it can also be, I mean, what am I going to say? It's how's your pacing too. If you have large swaths of it that are boring, a beta reader is more likely to quit it at that point, but an alpha reader is kind of committed because they want it to be good, right? I mean, it's like I brew beer, and the beer groups want your beers to be good, and so they want to teach you how to help you fix your bad beers. And it's the same with alpha readers. A beta reader is closer to a normal reader, right? Who may say, yeah, I'm good. I'm going to drop. That's why you can have a cattle call. But with alpha readers, you need every second of feedback they can give you. And they're willing to stick it out with you. And also maybe go to blows a little bit too, and tell you, you really kind of screwed this chapter up, and I don't know why. And then you can go back and you might get, and I had a whole character I had to cut from my first book, and my wife said, this character's not working, you got to cut it. Like, no, it's perfect. It's a great character. I love this character. And a week later I came back and apologized because she was right. And he's still going to see the light of day, I promise. But I had to cut him because he was just not working, and I needed somebody to tell me it's not working. Somebody who I would listen to, because I have people that I've learned that I can't listen to, and you learn to trust certain people. So can't trust your wife. Who can you trust?
And Andrew, this is my first time, speaking with you, but I am not surprised you brew your own beer.
And use it as an analogy to go with writing.
It makes a lot of great analogies across life, I tell you.
Yeah. So in my case, it's pretty simple, but I have like kind of I have mapped out the stuff that I know I'm better at and the stuff that I know I'm not good at. And even the stuff that I'm better at, I still have like certain things that I consider critical that I ask the alpha readers to look at, right? So pacing is the biggest one to me. Like if at any point you feel bored, I want to know. If at any point you feel like the book is too slow or too fast, I need to know that. And please don't hold back. This is the time for you to be mean to me, because if you're not mean to me, the internet will be mean to me when I publish this book. So I'd rather you, one person, be mean to me and tell me the truth. Or telling the truth isn't being mean, right? But sometimes people are kind of like, oh, I don't know how to say this. Just say it. Just tell me it sucks. Because I'd much rather have one person telling me it sucks than reviewers telling me the book sucks forever after that, right? So, except for Anita. Anita cannot be mean to me because she already bullies me, and she records videos saying that I'm a bully. So
she can be mean if she leaves 5 stars.
Yeah.
Only 5 stars.
There you go,
Anita. The transaction. There's an amount of meanness you can do per star.
Yeah. So yeah, and I kind of have these mapped out. Like, for example, for me, I'm pretty comfortable with my dialogue, and I very rarely see anyone criticizing the dialogue in the first 2 books. So that's not something that I'm going to tell the author, look, I want you to pay special attention to dialogue. Yes, sure. If something stands out, please do tell me, but I'm not going to say, keep an eye out for dialogue. I'll say, just like pacing is a big one, but I don't know if you're feeling like a certain character isn't working, or if a character isn't being consistent to what you expect of them, or if their characterization isn't deep enough. Those are things that I'd like to know, because I know when I'm writing that those are things that aren't the first things to necessarily come to mind. Those are the things that I go back and say, okay, now let me look at characterization, because I know it's not like second nature to me, like, I don't know, dialogue or whatever, battles, or and I'm not saying that, oh, I can't do this. It's just something that is not as easy or as what's the word, natural maybe to me to do it the first time, right? So that's why I use the alphas to say, okay, are these relationships working? Are you feeling like these characters are bouncing off each other, in a good way? Or are they bringing more to the story? Do you feel like the scenes are adding to these characters or to the plot, or to the story in general, or no, or is it a useless scene? Should I cut it? So stuff like that. So that's why I think it will be kind of different depending on the author. But my advice would be to just try and find the stuff that you feel less comfortable with when you're writing, and ask people to take a look at that, because also you might overcompensate sometimes, and really focus in on those things, and then they might actually be good, and then you let other stuff fall by the wayside. So you need to find your balance there.
And I think that's an important point too, is this is trial and error. You're learning as you write. Doesn't matter how many books you have under your belt, there's still something to learn. So, it's good to have helpful feedback in that sense, to help you grow and try different things and make it work better, and it's gonna, you might not get it the next book. You might have to try learn again. So
Yeah.
it's that's an important point.
I would also say that like alpha is the easiest stage to change something in your book. If you've been toying with it for several different drafts, it's harder to go back and change massive arcs or get rid of a character, get rid of a scene, because it changes everything. So you do want your alpha to tell you when something is not working or what something needs to be changed, because you don't want to spend 4 drafts working on something that's going to end up getting cut and then you need to change everything about your book.
Ain't no one got time for that.
Not in indies when you need to produce like every 2 months, like Andrew.
That's by accident.
Completely.
It's a lot of prep to get there.
I think the more books you write, though, the easier it is to change stuff, right? The less it hurts, I'd say. I mean, when you write your first book, it's like this kind of, fragile thing that you've just crafted, and oh, if I take out this piece, it'll all fall apart. And then when you get to like your second, third book, you're like, yeah, just bring it all down. We'll rebuild it. No worries.
Rip pages
Uh,
out,
Yeah. Like Andrew Wizard ripping pages out.
Blasphemy. That's what that
He'll
was.
he'll only do that if your spines are of different sizes.
Yeah.
So from this stage, we then go into the beta. So what is the beta reading?
So beta reading, and we've already talked about it a little bit. It's more of your book is better crafted at this point. It's really found its structure and its foundation. And now we're getting into things like enjoyment and what's working for a reader. You're really asking your readers, your beta readers, to act as readers, to give you feedback as readers, to look at your story and let you know if they're enjoying things and if it's touching them, or if it's affecting them emotionally, if the jokes are actually hitting. So we're getting a little bit more detailed and trying to figure out, are readers going to enjoy this down the road, instead of does it make sense?
That's excellent. So the big question then is, how do you pick your beta readers? Is there a big process for that? Do you get sign-up sheets? Do you just hand out flyers on the corner of the street?
My first group, I did a Facebook cattle call, and ended up with like 30 people, friends, family, people I hadn't talked with in decades, and so it gave me a really large body. They've since then dwindled down to like less than 6, but it was also a 5-year process. So it was back when I was pitching for publishing, and so I needed to know if it was good, and I didn't know what an alpha was either at that point, and so I was just sending it out to 30 people, getting feedback back, sending it back to those willing to read it a second time, getting feedback back, asking for more readers. So it's a bit of a desperate ditch effort, but that's what I did, is I just cattle called.
I think the cattle call works, or just ask people that you know by this point. I usually ask people if they'd rather read an arc or a beta. So because the beta is work, right? It's not just, oh, I'm gonna read this and then post a review or say good or bad things about it, because an arc is basically an early copy. Sorry, spoilers. I'm anticipating stuff here, but an arc's an earlier copy of what's almost or in most cases the final version of the book, right? So beta reading is actually like I'd rather ask people if they're okay to beta read a book, or if they'd rather read the arc, because you might read something that's going to change. It might just take away that veil, and you get a peek behind the curtain. And I don't want to spoil the magic if the person doesn't want to get into the bones of the story to help you fix it, right? So yeah, I think just just ask people who've maybe read a couple of your books. If it's your first book, again, I think it's the same process as alpha readers, though I would say alpha readers probably are people you need to know a little bit more, a little bit better, because the story will be a lot rougher. So beta readers are maybe just a little easier, I guess.
Don't do what I did for my first set of beta readers. I was doing research on everything from how does publishing work to what are beta readers. I was just deep diving into a lot of research, and I came on to one YouTuber's video who's talking about her beta process, and it was very detailed. She gave them questionnaires with every few chapters, and it was intensive. And I thought, I'm going to do that. And I got a group of maybe 8 people that had agreed to do beta reading, and I had them on a timetable, and I gave them questionnaires, and nobody got past like the second. It was not okay. Because I was like, this is how the YouTuber said to do it. I need to have this turnaround, and it was awful. So don't do that. You can definitely
YouTube
ask
made
your
me
beta
do it.
readers about specific things, but don't quiz them and test them and make them write a book report on every few chapters. That's not the right thing to do. So I ended up, after a few more drafts, going back and doing. I paid a couple of beta readers from Fiverr, and that worked for me because, one, I was scared about doing the same kind of thing and asking too much and not getting any feedback. And so I was like, I'm going to be asking very specific things from these readers, and I want that feedback to come through, and I want to know what kind of timetable I'm on. And so I ended up paying a couple of people $50 and got some feedback, and they had these forms that they filled out and let me know about the characters they liked, the characters they didn't like, and all of that. And that worked for me for book 1. I did something similar for book 2 because book 1 hadn't come out yet. But I think going forward, having readers already know my story a little bit, it might be a little bit easier to find beta readers now. But when you don't have any stories out there and nobody knows who you are, it can be difficult to find people to beta read.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think I ended up looking at. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just gonna say there's services that you can hire for better readers.
I ended up, when I was working early on trying to find betas, I did what Sanderson did and made a giant. He runs like a 300 person beta on each of his books. Crazy. I was glad I got 30. That was crazy enough. But I did a spreadsheet with chapter by chapter for my rows, and then column for each individual reader. And then those who wanted to be involved on that end could be in there, and then they got to actually feed off of each other a little bit. So you start seeing a little bit of this. Oh yeah, that was a problem for me too. And then other people wanted to be much more private and write me an afterwards email, just a personal email, and I could take from that. To answer what Elizabeth's asking there about how long it should be, I then gave them like 2-3 months. Beta should be a good long process where you completely forget about what you even wrote. So that and I was obsessive the first beta where I was watching the comments come in like as they're typing, and I'm like, oh, this is so great. And then I didn't get anything done because I was spending my time fixing the problems as they came in, and then having to refix them with every single beta person. If you wait until the very end and get it all at once and you can compile it, then you're coming back with a much more clinical look at your piece. So and longer the beta, the better.
I'll add that you don't have to change everything that betas tell you to change.
Yeah.
But it's good to keep an open mind. Like it's the same thing with editing, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes people might say something, but if you have a few betas and they're all saying the same thing, maybe you should look at it, right?
I had one beta who was being really mean. He was just, and not even like he was looking for he was just looking for problems, and he was just sticking a knife in me, and I was like, you know what? I don't have to take this. And so I just, oh, nice. Mm-hmm. You nod. Oh, interesting. Oh, yeah. And you don't react. Then I got back on, I'm not fixing anything he says. This is bull. And then my best friend who was in an MFA program brought the same problems. And I was like, okay, now I'll listen. Let's chat. to those who want to be betas too is, we want to be scathed when it's time, but we also want to earn each other's respect and how we're going to work with each other. I'm going to try to give you the most polished piece I can, and let's make it a conversation. So I mean, it goes both ways. We can be jerks too. We authors can be jerks if just by ignoring somebody who's got comments.
No,
But
You're handing over your baby to someone and being defensive. Why would that?
speak for
you know?
yourself, Andrew.
but that's why it's great to have a large alpha a beta body, right? Is so that you can kind of inoculate yourself to that one person who's just there to troll, and you're probably not going to ask them back. And that's and you're also inoculating yourself for later when bad reviews come in. Is if you're not ready for the trolls, then you're gonna have a real hard time publishing.
Joe says he's sorry. You're calling him out like on the live stream. Said he's sorry about the beta read.
It wasn't you, Joe.
Trisha also
It was
has
me.
an interesting comment here that she asked Beta to read in a month, and she requests the ABCDs: amazing, boring, confusing, didn't believe.
That's a good way of going about it. It's easy for the reader to remember.
So there was a comment made, and I just want to touch on it for a moment because I'm genuinely curious as well. How do you decide who you want to ask for beta reading versus who you want to keep as your ARC readers, if you want to keep those separate?
Yeah, I just leave it up to them, to be honest, because I think the person has to be willing to beta read. So I just ask them, look, I'm looking for beta readers, but I'll also be putting out ARC. So if you prefer to do an ARC, it's fine. I think you'd be a good beta reader if you want it, but no pressure. And I'm happy to send you an ARC as well. Then I'll just let them pick.
That's fair.
I feel like I would also tie it to what kind of review they're going to leave, right? Like someone who's a beta. When you have somebody who's beta reading and it's still maybe even an early beta, and then they 6 months later when it's published, review it badly based on what they read, like, come on, man, come on. Versus an ARC reader is right up there, right? Like maybe you're going to get a review. They don't have to review, obviously. It's up to them. But you're promising them a more polished book because it's right at the very cusp for potentially a better review versus a beta does have to wade through bad typos.
Yeah.
I actually ask my beta readers not to review it.
Mm-hmm.
I tell them, look, this is a beta. It's not meant for review. So please, if there's stuff you don't like, tell me. Don't keep it for a review because I'll change it, or I might change it. And then people are going to look for what you're saying. They're not going to find it. It's not even about, the stars or anything. It's just about the person, reviewing the book with something that might not be there. So that's just why I asked them not to review.
I would also say I would be much more picky with betas. At least from my perspective with ARCs, I was handing them out like it was Halloween and it was candy. Like just anyone who wants one, take. I would not do that with beta because one, you're going to get trolls. Two, some people don't really have the commitment to follow through. And with betas, sometimes you're relying on people to follow through much more than ARCs. ARCs is really, we're hoping for a review. But betas, we really need that feedback so that we can get a reader's perspective and address some concerns that might be there. So your average reader is not ready to be a beta reader if they don't know what it is, if they're not ready for a manuscript that has typos and has issues in it. If somebody's not prepared to be a beta reader, they're not going to be a good one. So I'm much more selective with somebody who would read at that stage.
I totally agree. And when I say, I leave it up to them, I pre-select the people that I'd like to beta read, but I leave it up to them if they'd like to beta read or, say no and wait for the ARC.
And JCM, he's got a good comment here as well. ARC readers are people who can promote your book. They're influencers. Betas are anybody with writing skill. They can be unknown as long as they can help your craft.
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well. Who's this JCM guy?
Yeah, random person superhero stories.
That's sci-fi fantasy.
Yes. So when you're going through this stage, there's a certain mentality you will need to have, right? You're going to get feedback and it's not always going to be positive, as you mentioned. What should you keep in mind when you're getting feedback, good or bad?
Quiet, dignity, and respect.
I think first of all, never try to explain to the person who's giving you feedback, um, like why you did that or why it's right or why it's wrong, unless you're actively in a discussion and trying to understand their point to see what makes sense, right? So but don't justify yourself, is what I'm saying. Only um, question them to make sure that the feedback is clear. That's point one. I think you're not trying to convince them. You're just taking their feedback and saying, okay, I'll consider it. Thank you very much. Um, Goodbye. Uh, and second is don't lose sight of what you envisioned for the story. Like not in a resistant way, like not accepting feedback, but you have to keep in mind, what do you want to do, what you expect from the story, and if the changes that are being suggested are in line with your vision, basically, because it's your story in the end, right? So uh, be a little critical of what you change and what you don't, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I would say that the perspective along that lines is be confident but not hubris.
Yeah.
You want to believe in your story. You wrote it for a reason, and there are things in there that have importance, and they need to be told the way that you want to tell them. At the same time, you cannot tell a story perfectly without help. You can't tell a story perfectly with help, but help is always going to get you closer to that ideal that you had in your mind. So as Tiago was saying, you got to be open to it, but you also need to remember your vision and be confident enough to say no, that doesn't go in line with what I had in mind. You don't have to tell the beta reader that, but that's an internal conversation of yes and no when you take feedback, and when you don't.
I'd say something important, which I call it my golden rule of editing. I think it's really important, which is proximity creates blind spots. If we've ever chatted or if you've ever seen me, talking, you've seen me say this. It's something my editor said to me when I was starting out, and I think it's probably the best piece of feedback that I've got. When you're close to something you don't know, you do not have the capacity to find all of the mistakes because your brain fixes it for you because you know how it's supposed to look. That's why typos slip through if you don't have a third party looking at them, and that's just a simple example. That's also why plot holes slip through. That's also why any problems with the story can slip through. So if you keep that in mind, I think that helps you with a confident but not hubris that you said, James, that I really like, because you are having an outside perspective can help you look at it. So I think balancing it out is super important, but also remember that no matter how right you think it is, you need to be aware that your brain is kind of going to try to trick you. So just be aware of that.
I think that authors have to walk this really weird tightrope of you have to be somewhat arrogant and confident enough to believe that the story you want to write down and put out there is worth other people spending their time and money on. And that's a wild thing. Like, I wrote this down, I spent a long time on it, I put it on paper. Now buy it and spend a lot of your time reading it and consuming it. That is, there's something arrogant and confident about that. At the same time, if you buy into that too much, you're going to have a horrible story out there and you're going to get your feelings hurt a lot and you're just not going to have a good experience. So I would, you got to have that aspect, but you also have to have that questioning aspect that is willing to change and willing to move and adapt. And that's a hard tightrope to walk. If you fall too hard on either side of it, you're going to lose your willingness to keep on moving forward with writing.
Yeah,
being conscientious too of how much you have in your control and how much you need to invest elsewhere. I mean, art. The definition of art is knowing when to say good enough. Eventually, you're just yeah, you can keep polishing it, but you're gonna have to get an editor eventually. Like, Bulb, I can't afford an editor. Sorry, you can keep polishing it, but now you're just wasting time. You spend another 50 hours going through your book to make one change. Well, maybe now it's good enough. No, it's not. But you got to say good enough for you and move on. So you can get on to the next book, because you're not going to grow by polishing a million times. So
There's a music artist, Kanon, that I really loved when I was in college, and I loved his early stuff because it felt raw and it felt unpolished, and there's just a lot about it that I loved. And then he got a little bit more popular, produced a CD that felt like, and this was a while ago because I'm saying CD, but it felt too polished, it felt too produced, it felt unreal, and it didn't feel like him anymore. And so I think that's exactly what you're talking about. Like, you can over edit, you can focus on something too much to the point where it's no longer, it doesn't feel true anymore. It just feels plastic.
Someone tell Rothos that.
And George.
I'm sorry, I was laughing at Joe's comment. It's only anagrams if you're wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't laughing at you, Andrew. Sorry.
I know. I was laughing at that too.
So with that, setting a bit of the expectations on the author's side, let's talk a little bit about the tools that you use to hand over your beta reading and get that feedback, because technology is amazing now. We can do things like this and have chats across the world. So what are some of the tools that can help with the beta reading process?
Carrier pigeons.
One page at a time, or?
Well, if you could also do swallows, and you put a vine between the two of them, and they can carry a whole manuscript.
Is it an African swallow?
Yeah.
African swallows are non-migratory.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a European. Yeah.
So birds tweeting. Got it.
So, I mean, I'm just super simple when it comes to software and tools and stuff. So I just use Word to write. So if people like want to use Word and comment, or Google, whatever the Google alternative for Word is, and just leave comments in the sidebar, that's perfect for me. I wouldn't get too fancy with it, because the focus is the story. It's not necessarily doing. Otherwise, you're gonna start telling people to download stuff and use a certain program or whatever, and then it's just another hoop to jump through, right?
Yeah, I do want to design an app that does that, though, if I could actually program.
I mean, sure.
Yeah, I do the same as Jago. I send out Word docs and have them comment and track changes. That's about it.
Yeah.
Same. Whatever I can use. Sometimes, it's not hard for me to push it into Drive or Google Docs, or cut them an EPUB and send them the EPUB, where they can make comments in that, which can be a little harder if they can't export it, or PDF. But whatever they prefer, I want to make it as hurdleless as possible for them.
Yeah.
And that, I'm sure, is much appreciated, because everyone reads differently too, and leaves comments and types all that out in different formats, different programs. Not everyone might have Word.
Mm-hmm.
So it's flexibility is what it sounds like is important with that.
It's my job to have the headache when it comes back to me, not theirs. I want them to give me some feedback. And if that, I do whatever it takes to make it easier for them. So.
Oh, that's fair. So with the beta stage from here, let's talk about sensitivity readers. Does anyone want to give us a little definition on what that is?
Yeah, I can give a quick definition on that. So a sensitivity reader is somebody who's going to look at your manuscript from the angle of if you're writing about an identity, whether that's race, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, religion, ability status, the lists go on. If you're writing about characters that really fall outside of your experienced wheelhouse, you can, and I encourage you to use sensitivity readers to really give you feedback on, are you doing those characters justice? Are you realizing their full humanity, or are you falling into some, implicit bias that you didn't know you had? These readers, this is more of a job. So I would say most sensitivity readers end up being paid. And I would consider them along the lines of an editor more than I would a beta reader. Because they're really doing work to go through your manuscript, look at the language you use, look at the characterization you use, and see if you are doing any unintentional harm. And I think it's really important. I'm writing often characters who don't share my experiences, and I don't share theirs. And so I want to make sure that when I write my stories, that I'm not going to do any harm by putting them out there. I don't want to hurt communities when I'm producing my art.
And I would say the same goes true for any kind of expert reader too. Like if you're writing hard sci-fi and you need a nuclear physicist to look at it, that's a super smart move. I mean, we started this off talking about alpha and beta reading, and I started using alpha when I was a game designer, and our company would bring in players for me, and I would not just run the games, but also do focused, like, hey, can you please play undead with nothing but skeletons, and I want you to break it. So really, they're meant to break your book. That's what all expert readers are for, is to tell you where you've just completely fallen flat, and not in a how your arc falls flat, but did you do everything justice? And that's where you're specifically asking them not to enjoy the book. You're asking for them to sit there and get in line by line. It's a line edit, right? It's not meant to enjoy it. They're meant to fix the lines. So yeah.
Tiago?
Yeah, I just rely on my editors, to be honest. I don't do separate sensitivity reading. Like James said, I do try to avoid the controversial topics, I guess. But yeah, it's a fine line, because I'm not only gonna write, about people who are like me. Obviously, you want to write different experiences, but just try and use your common sense when you're writing it. I agree with James. Sometimes there's stuff that you don't even notice. So, yeah, I kind of rely on my editors for that a bit, because they've read, like, they do this for a living. So
Yeah.
if something sticks out, they will.
Because the
raise
company
their hand and
you
tell me.
use does every single stage, right? And they're as a company working together to polish those issues.
Yeah. It's not like one guy like doing freelance editing. I use a company of editors, right? So yeah, they're pretty experienced with this kind of stuff. So I rely on them for that.
And along that line, sensitivity reading can be expensive. I would suggest that if you're going to use sensitivity reading, that you don't kind of insult somebody about their time and their quote. Just like editing, you don't want to tell somebody like, I can't pay you what your quote is. Let me offer you half. These are professionals who put in their time. But I would say if you can't afford it, make sure that your beta readers are a diverse group of people. You don't want everybody coming from the same background, the same life experience, because they're going to see everything the same way.
That's a good point. Just with regards to Andrew's comment, with the sci-fi being accurate, I think that's a good example is The Martian by Andy Weir. There's only one scene from what I've heard that is not scientifically accurate. The rest is all scientifically accurate. So, and that one scene was the dust storm at the beginning, because the dust storm scientifically cannot be that big, but it had to be for the plot.
Yeah.
Right. Everything else is sound. So, and it makes a huge difference in the story, right? It's a widely known story now, very popular, and and praised for its accuracy. So I think
Yeah.
that's an important stage.
And he had rolling improvements too, not just from the
Hmm.
short story, but then they fixed other issues in the movie. But
Oh,
the
okay.
book alone made NASA rethink everything about Mars from
Yeah.
his experience, and then they worked with him, and he worked with them to improve it for the movie, to fix those, to iron out those other issues and add more to like the. I think hit the potato thing was totally his idea, and they're like, well, of course we should bake potatoes. Why didn't we think of that?
Oh, that's awesome.
Which is why you take a botanist.
Yes, that's why you take a botanist to a supposedly lifeless planet.
Yes.
So leading into ARCs, ARCs are advanced reader copies, and they are kind of the stage that inspired this conversation, as James had done a blog post about his experience with doing ARCs and how that influenced his publishing journey so far with No Heart for a Thief. Well, I'm blanking on a name there. So the article was really interesting because you went into the pros, you went into the cons, and I feel like this stage has a lot more guts to it because there's a lot more that's going on. You're flinging out copies of books to all different kinds of people. There's different strategies from the feedback that I've heard. And so I want to talk about this a little bit, but can we get a good definition, better than what I did, of advanced reading copies?
So yeah, ARCs. Some people call them advanced review copies or advanced reading copies. I think it's up to you. I don't think it really matters. This is the stage where the book is very, very close to done, right? There still might be typos. There still might be, grammatical error here or there to fix. But this is the stage where if you give this to someone and they're willing to overlook, typos here and there, it should read like the final product, right? Because as I said, you have 3 stages of editing. And you can pick which ones you do, but I go through all 3. So there's developmental editing, which is fixing the story, structure, character, all that. Line editing, which is fixing your prose basically, and copy editing, which is fixing your grammar, right? A lot of people just think editing is fixing your grammar, but that's the last stage. That's like the final polish. I send out ARCs after the line edit usually to give me a little more time to fix the copy editing. So my ARCs might have, typos here and there and grammatical errors, and I let the readers know because it isn't the final product, but I mean, to me, that shouldn't affect, your enjoyment basically of a book with a few typos and a book that's a lot more polished and has those typos removed and fixed, right? So the ARC to me is I call it basically the final version with typos. So if a person reads it and reads the final book, the story itself has to be the same. You don't get to change stuff anymore at this stage, right? You're giving the book to people who will review it and who will promote it and will put the word out there and let other people know that, hey, this book has been launched. I read it, I reviewed it, it's good, or this or that didn't work for me. But ARCs are largely promotional, I'd say, as opposed to alphas and betas, which are still part of the process of writing the book.
Yeah.
Long-winded definition, but I guess.
And experience.
Yeah, and I would say it's been mentioned that ARC readers are influencers. They can be. So my approach to ARC readers was I wanted as many people to have my book in their hands as possible. The day that I did a cover reveal, I also had a link in that cover reveal asking people to sign up to become an ARC reader. And I said yes to virtually everyone. There's one person I said I didn't move forward with because of some problematic things in their Twitter profile that I was like, I'm not sure about this person. But everybody else I moved forward with. They got a electronic copy of my book. I ended up with over 80 ARC readers for my book. not everybody came through with a review. I would say about half probably did. But that helped me launch my book with 40 reviews. And as an unknown author who had nothing else out, no short stories, no free novellas, no nothing, that was really big for me to be able to have 40 people um, promote my book with even just a review. Now there are some people that were definitely a lot more influential and would talk about my book in discords or would promote it on Twitter, or a couple of people talked about it on YouTube, and that was great. But then there were also some people who it was their first review. Actually, there are a few people who were a part of my team um, who did their first review on my book and then continued on to do reviews for a lot of other indies, and then joined I think one joined the fantasy reviews and one joined escapist books. And so there are people just trying to start, and it's hard for them to get arcs. If you're a debut, find those people because they're hungry for it.
Yeah, I agree. Especially digital arcs, that basically cost you nothing. You don't have to be picky unless the person's a troll. So just social proof is super important, both for the Amazon algorithm and for other people looking your book up. So, when you launch, you need to have those reviews on Goodreads and Amazon. So, as James said, having like 40 reviews to start with is great. It's awesome. And it shows, other people that a lot of people have already, given this book a shot. So, maybe you should too. Social proof, basically. Yeah, and again, I agree. Maybe if you want to be picky with the physical copies that actually cost you a little more money, that's fine, because you have to have it printed and sent. So those aren't free. But digital copies, especially before Amazon publishes it, because there's the whole like exclusivity thing that you can't really send ebooks after they're published on Amazon, right? And you're exclusive. But you're sending out arcs before they're published, just go crazy.
I'm kind of at a disadvantage because I was new and learning when I launched my two first of series books. So I have a harder time with arcs because they're second and third books, and you kind of have to read the first ones. So you do end up doing a lot of no A RCs, sending out review copies to people. And I also do my own audiobooks, which is basically my last edit. So I get it back from an editor and I record my audiobook, which really pushes up to launch date. And so you end up with more changes than most books, at least in my experience. So I can't speak to how well arcs work for me because they haven't yet, because I was learning 2 years ago.
That's fair. And I think Elizabeth's comment here is well said. The best arcs I've gotten have been from authors who've considered whether the book will appeal to me, bonus points if they've read my reviews and know my review style, so there's an understanding. I think that's important because as a reviewer myself, I've gotten emails saying, I've watched your YouTube channel. I think you're going to love my romance book. And if they've actually watched my channel, they know I've talked a lot about that romance tropes are not on my end of things. I don't mind romance in a genuine relationship, but don't give me the lovers or the enemies to lovers kind of thing. And then I've had great emails as well where they've said, I see you love found family. I see you love this. I see you liked this book. These all kind of correlate to my book. Would you consider? That really does make a difference when you're pitching to potential reviewers.
Yeah, and I'll say, the first book is a hard one. After that, you kind of start building your art team, your beta team, and all that. So it starts getting easier, and you know people who've read the first book would probably like to review the second book. And to be clear, arc readers don't have to give you good reviews, right?
No.
They just you hope that they give you a review. They don't even have to give, like, if you're sending someone their book, you send them your book and you forget about it, right? You, as an author, you do not go back and say, hey, have you read it? Hey, I really need a review or whatever. Oh, hey, can you help me out? No, just forget you even sent the book. And if the person posts a review, great. If they don't, okay. Because life happens. Sometimes people, or aren't in the mood to read that kind of story, and it's fine. That's why you should also give them a lot of like 2-3 months is ideal, if not a little more, so that people have time to read the book. And just start building your team. The people who are always interested and looking to post reviews. Just send them the book. Like they don't even have to ask for it, right? You just say, hey, new book's coming out, you want to be on my team or whatever, and then just you have the team built, and that's it.
And sending an ARC to somebody and they don't write a review is not theft. It's a marketing spend. You can write it off. So
Yeah.
I mean that you do have to write it off. I mean it's the same when you sink money into an ad that does nothing. The company you put the ad does not care that they took your money. It's not theft either. You agreed to it, and it's just a marketing spend. You get to write it off on your taxes.
I think this is a good time to practice that humility that you need as an author. You are more excited about the launch of your book than your readers. For the most part, there are probably some diehard fans out there that are really interested in that next book from my fellow authors on this panel. But
and yours,
for the most
James.
part, what?
And yours, James.
I know some
Put a
people
little
are
arrogance
waiting.
in there.
But you're more excited than most of your ARC readers. It's not the most important thing in their life that's going on. That's why you give them as much time as you can. Don't harass them. I put my ARCs out there, and I told them when they signed up for an ARC, I'll do 2 reminders over these 2 months, and I'll just say, this book is coming out in a month. If you're going to review it, that would be great. If not, understood. And a week before, like just to put it on your radar, this is happening. I did not email into anybody individually. You need to step back. Don't be caught on the authors behaving badly. Hashtag. You don't need that kind of attention and that kind of press.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's the best kind of 5-star, Nathan. Stolen one. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I think it's important as well, as at least I've found helpful when you're sending out the ARC to give details to those ARC readers of, if you are going to read and review, fantastic, thank you. Something that I've found helpful is, what date do you want the review? Like the earliest do you want it posted? Because I might read it a month or two in advance of the date, and I might end up reading it after the fact. But if I read it a month or two before the actual release date, you probably don't want reviews. Some authors might not want reviews up there that early. Others might want it closer to the actual release date or on release date. So I don't know if any of you have a preference on that, but I've found that I get that sometimes and I don't get that information. And then when I don't, I'm like, no, am I breaking rules? Please tell me.
I hate stressing readers out. So I mean, if there's an ARC reader and they say, I would love an ARC, but it's not going to be till 4 months after you release it, I'm still going to send it to you, because a review is a review is a review. It's showing up 4 months later is still going to benefit me later on. Is it a launch review? No, but other people are gonna shore that up, because other people are going to be excited and want to read it. And if you have a giant TBR stack, you're not going to get to it, and it's going to give you mass anxiety that you didn't get around to my book. That's no fun. It's no fun at all, because now your review is forced, and I would much rather have authentic reviews and authentic late reviews than stressed out one-liners that say, hey, it was great, it's 5, thanks for the gift, it's so long, thanks for all the fish. Like, that doesn't help me. It doesn't help. I mean, not saying you have to write more than a paragraph. I mean, you don't have to be Elizabeth, who writes beautiful, huge reviews. It doesn't have to be that. But I'd like more than one line, please.
Yeah,
So-
I'm the same with that. I always tell readers, look, if you can review it, before launch, great. if you can't, please don't stress out. I want you to enjoy this. I sent you this book because I want you to have a cool experience. Do not read it thinking that, this is an obligation and that you have to read it. I'd much rather you enjoy yourself, take your time, and if you want to review it whenever you can, that's great. Otherwise, it's fine as well. I just hope you have a good experience with it, and that's that. Just I think that's where it should end. And to answer your question, Kate, to me, the earlier the better,
Yeah.
because people start seeing that buzz is kind of being generated around that book. But Amazon does not let you post reviews until the book is launched. So it's usually on Goodreads, and then you have to kind of remind people, say, look, the book launched on Amazon. If you could maybe copy it, like not individually, just send your ARC readers an email. Just tell them, if you've posted on Goodreads, remember to copy it onto Amazon now, because they don't let you do that earlier. So
No, that's a good point. Thank you.
That's pretty much my approach as well. I probably got about 30 ARC reviewers early on, but then when Craig Bookworm put up his review, it was my first review. After that review went out, a slew of people came in wanting an ARC, and that really helped me out. So especially if you're a debut, earlier the better, but you're not asking people to force it. You don't want them to read it like it's a homework assignment.
yeah.
Because nobody wants to read a book under that kind of pressure. It's just not enjoyable. And so I would wholeheartedly agree with that. A review is a review. So if it comes 4 months late, great. And then, I give the Amazon the disclaimer in my ARC emails as well. Like, it can go on Amazon, it can go on Goodreads anytime, but Amazon will make you wait, or it will delete it if it's early.
Yeah.
And we do have a couple questions here. So John is asking, what format does an eARC need to be in?
If you have to do PDF, you can, but if you can do an EPUB, you should. And you can get EPUBs made you can format them for free on Drafted Digital. Whether you're going to go wide with Drafted Digital, they invite people to come and put the book in, lay it out as an eARC, and then you can use that EPUB later when you upload it into Amazon. It's just fine. But almost all of your word processors will cut it as an eARC or as an EPUB. It doesn't mean that it's a great EPUB. It's not fully formatted, but at least has a cover and at least it works. But I think at the point where you're at an ARC, you should probably be laying it out in Drafted Digital, just so that it's got to see a decent enough layout. Unless you're paying a layout artist, that's fine too. But if you're just trying to get an eARC out and you want it to be something they're going to want to keep on their Kindle, do a layout as best as you can. It only takes. It took me today. I laid one out in 2 hours or less. So it takes a little practice. But honestly, Drafted Digital is not difficult to use.
I use. Oh, sorry. Go for it.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say I use Atticus. Atticus is another tool that I mainly use for just formatting my ebooks, and it gives you some fun tools to add in little designs and things like that.
Does it let you change margins? Like control? That's for never mind. That's for print. Forget me.
For print, yes.
It does. Okay.
Yeah, so you can in Atticus, you can give them the size of your book, you can give them the margins, you can do all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I download, and then you can download from Atticus in PDF, Mobi, and EPUB. So I did that, and then I uploaded them to a Story Origin account. I have a free account, and so I just had a downloadable link where it would the link would take them to a page, and they would click on which version they want, and it would download the version for them. So it made it very easy. I didn't have to send out any files. I just sent out the link in the emails that I send out to any ARC reader. And then I also add things like the ISBN number, add things like the page count and word count. Just give your ARC readers as much information as you can. It's all helpful.
I need to up my game to that too, because like I just put each version in a singular file on Google Drive. And then when someone just pings me and say, "Hey, can I have an ARC?" I can just go link, take whichever one you want. I don't care.
Yeah, but I do the same thing as James, but I use Vellum and BookFunnel instead of Atticus and Story Origin, because Atticus didn't exist yet when I was doing this. So I actually have to. I don't have a Mac because Vellum only works on Mac. So I use Mac in Cloud, which is this kind of like virtual Mac server that you can. I have Vellum installed in it, and you pay like $1 an hour that you use it. So I pay like maybe $30 a year because the minimum is $30. So you hire it for $30, and then I use like 5 hours per book, I guess. So, and then Vellum is the same. They just give everything. They give you everything ready, right? They give you Mobi, not Mobi anymore, but anyway, EPUB, print and whatever, and the files are just ready, and then all you have to do is upload it to BookFunnel and send people the link, and they can pick what kind of format they want, which is even to me it's easier even than Google Drive, Andrew, because you already have the books there, so anytime anyone wants to download it, all you have to do is just send them the link.
Atticus and BookFunnel, Patricia, I would not say that those are the equivalent. It's Atticus and Vellum that are more similar. Vellum is specifically for Mac. So as Thiago was saying, if you don't have a Mac, you're going to have to use a Mac server. Atticus works on any iOS or PC. So I prefer that because I run off a PC, and it works really well for me. I think BookFunnel and Story Origin, I don't know a whole lot about the difference between the two. I just know that Story Origin lets me do it for free, and so that's why I use them.
And I understand that those aggregate out, like you can do your audiobooks on there too, I think.
I think so, yeah.
I think so, yeah. It might be the paid account. I don't know.
I think so.
Yeah, it probably is a paid account. I don't have an audiobook yet. It's in production, so we'll see then.
So as a reviewer, I did get an audiobook via BookFunnel. So I don't know what the back end of that is, but I do know that you can send them out.
Okay, good.
Great.
Yep.
And Matt here is curious, what percentage of ARC copies do you send out that you actually get reviews on? Have those numbers handy.
Yeah, I'd say 40 to 50%.
Yeah, probably.
It's probably like the industry standard, I guess. Which is kind of mind-blowing, right? Half of the people don't review your book, but I guess it is what it is. And to be fair, I think the people who haven't reviewed your book just haven't read it yet, and they do eventually read it, and maybe we just don't track them that long, but I'd say first maybe week, month, it's usually around 50%.
Yeah.
And those that did read it and didn't like it and didn't leave you a review, I don't want to hear from them anyway. So
yeah, some of them are doing you a favor.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think it's important too to note that when you're sending out review copies, you don't want it to just be a 1 month hurrah after release. You want that wave to continue, and it's going to fluctuate and it's going to change over time. So you're going to want that buzz to keep going after your book is published. You don't want it to just, okay, that was a nice month. Yeah, that book's in the trash. Let's go and write book 2 and get the hype going for that. You want it to keep going. And I think a good example of that was Mike's book reviews when he, after 2 years sitting on his shelf, I think it was, he finally picked up Mike Shackle's books. And then he got feedback that there was a lot more interest in it at that spike as well, because he started talking about it, and it just takes one person.
Mm-hmm.
I will say things are also getting easier for audiobooks. So I released my audiobook same day as my release, and I couldn't give any audiobooks away until release day. And Findaway just switched it now so that the 100 free codes you get as an author, they drop 2 weeks after you upload. So as long as I get it early enough, We just uploaded an audiobook today, and if it gets approved, then within 2 weeks we start and sending out audio arcs 2 weeks before release date, so we can have audio only reviewers listening early on. And it used to be that we couldn't do any of that until day of release, which sucked a lot. But
I'm going to bring up this comment because I think it's absolutely hilarious. John, well, Kay, what about the authors who write 3 books at once and release them all each month? Then they are having a marathon. That is what's happening.
probably also I was probably also making a mistake when I did it. So
I want to talk a little bit about, from your experience with sending out ARCs and getting those reviews, what might you do differently in the future?
So I
To me,
think
it's always. Sorry, go ahead.
we keep on doing this.
Yeah.
it's the time zone change.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I did differently was I had ordered some books from Ingram Spark for review copies, and they took forever, much longer than I was expecting them. And so I ended up, when I got them, it was like a few weeks out from release. And so I just went on Twitter and said, I have some books. Who wants one? It was not the most strategic plan. I was lucky and I got a couple of people that were, Bo Kelly picked one up and he ended up reading it and loving it and shouting its praises. But it wasn't the most strategic use of paid copies, because not only do you have to pay a lot for the books to come in, it's the shipping that really kills you, especially if they're out of the country. And so I would be a little bit more strategic about who's getting a hard copy, especially from my perspective now. Anybody who operates on a visual medium like YouTube or TikTok, visual, like hard copies are great because you can show those, you can get those on camera, and that does a lot of work for you. Whereas bloggers, there's not much difference between a photo of a hard copy and just the cover of your book in a digital format. So I would say that's a little bit of a difference for me.
Yeah, I've had authors offer me ARCs, and I just told them, dude, I live in Brazil. Do you know how much it takes to, like, how much it'll cost you to send me the book? Just, if you really want to send me an ebook, that's great, but please don't send me the physical, because it'll take forever. I won't be able to review it before launch, and it's going to cost you like 4 books. So as an author, I know that that's not going to be worth it for you, because unless I had a huge platform. So yeah, just send me the ebook and it's fine. Yeah, sending physical books out is I send mine straight from Ingram because I live in Brazil, so I don't get to order the boxes and send them out. I just send them straight from Ingram to people. What I do differently, to me it's always about time. I'm trying to release my books really fast. But I would maybe consider, it's such a tough decision, because are you gonna delay the release so that ARC readers can get more time to read it? And I decided on not delaying the release, but telling ARC readers that you can read it whenever. Don't worry. So yeah, I just say maybe more time to get people just comfortable with reading it. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think just being part of the community and having people excited is a big part of getting ARCs, and I'm pretty happy with the people who are always interested in my books. I think every sequel makes it a bit harder, right? It's always less and less people because not everyone has read up to that part of the series. So I think to James' point, strategically, maybe have a plan in place to get more people on board. Maybe do a sale. Maybe, I don't know, try and find a way to get people to read your book, a readathon or whatever. do not offer rewards for reviews. That is illegal in Amazon's terms of service. But whatever you can do to encourage people to read your book, especially closer to a launch, like if it's a book 3, like mine is coming up, I'm gonna want a lot of people reading books 1 and 2 so that they can get the arcs for book 3. But uh, I think expectation plays a big part as well. I'm not expecting to get more people on book 3 than I had at book 2, and I didn't expect no more arc readers for book 2 than I had book 1. But like Andrew said, a review is a review, so eventually they'll come in. Doesn't all have to be from arcs.
I would say what I would do differently is what I couldn't control then, and that is having a larger street team. Right? Is the most difficult part about the indie community is finding the indie community. It's hard enough to find books on Amazon because you can't see past 50 on almost any search you do. And the more you're involved in the indie community, the more you find of the indie community, and that's what builds that street team of people who you can, who you're already friends with, and not just friends because you're buddy, but because you all enjoy the same books, and then you can be much more intentional and strategic on matching a book to somebody who will love your book because they're your fans. I mean, like they say, to make it, you got to have 1,000 super fans who will buy literally anything you write. And I'm working on it. I think I might be at 10. Got a ways to go, but that's the secret. And the secret is not just finding people who love your books, people who like you too, because that's something we're able to do as indie authors that a lot of trad can't do, mostly because their publishers tell them they can't, right? Like they're not supposed to interact except when they're supposed to interact. And we get to, as entrepreneurs, be continually interactive with each other and boost each other, not encourage each other. It's huge. So
yeah, and I just say, totally agree, but finding the people who really love your book and really shout about your book is one of the best feelings ever. And hold on to that. Don't be a stalker, don't be awkward about it, but if someone really likes your book, interact with them. Like if it's a YouTuber, try and learn more about them and interact. Like I don't know if Cassidy's still in the chat, but she was like a incredible, like I don't even know the word for it. She just like raised my flag and said, everyone needs to read A Touch of Light. Yeah. Everyone needs to read A Touch of Light. And that's just mind blowing to me, right? Because someone loves your book that much and they're always, like asking people, recommending it to people and just join that community is what I'm saying. Just be part of that person's community. And I eventually started reading a lot of books that she likes as well, and they were all hits for me because surprise, if she likes my book, I'll probably like the books that she likes as well. So everyone wins in the end. So just, you're an author, but you're a reader as well, and if you're going to be part of the community, just keep those relationships alive, and especially those relationships with people who really loved your book.
Just like real friends, you don't know when they're going to show up.
Yeah.
I mean, Anith is a great example of that. I had audiobooks finally available for a book, and I put it up, and I think 15 people took it, and a couple did listen to it right away. And Anitha got back to it like 3 months later and said, "I checked the link; it's broken." And so I sent her a new link, and now she's reading my books. But it's only because she was bored one day and said, "I guess I should listen to this." And you never know. You never know who you're going to make friends with. It's like making friends on the playground. Sometimes you look at somebody and say, "Hey, Chug, I want to be best friends." Okay, I guess.
Sometimes you both join Spiffbo and then
yeah, exactly.
Start out with awkward conversations.
Join Spiffbo. That's what you do.
Yeah.
And
are you in this year, James?
I'm counting down the days. I'm so worried that I'm going to miss the window.
We're all going to be up at 5 a.m. together.
Yeah,
go at the same time.
And I think it's important too to mention that one of the big end goals here when you're publishing a book is finding your reader audience.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes time. It takes, throwing your books out like candy at the ARC stage if you have to.
Yeah.
It's going to be trial and error, but a lot of it is, like you said, getting into the indie communities, talking to people, making friends, trying to find the people who like the same things you do, like Giago and Cassidy, and then that recommendation goes out. I am curious for your marketing tactics and with your cover reveals. Did that impact the interest or demand for the arc of the actual book for any of you?
100%. My cover is the only reason. I always say a lot of stuff is the only reason people know about me. And Alan got mad at me the other day because I said Spiffbo was the only reason people knew about me. It was like, oh, geez, thanks. Because Alan was like, he was the first person who reviewed my book. And he made a point of recording the review to go out on release day. And, I'm eternally thankful for him. And Alan, of course, was, the first guy that really jumped onto my book. And I've been in his community, in his Discord for so long that, I've also just gained a ton out of that. So big shout out to Alan as well. But I think that's the example of what a good cover can do, because Alan knew nothing about my book. He knew nothing about me. He saw the cover on NetGalley, and he decided, and we haven't talked about NetGalley, we can get into that later, but he decided to download it after reading a blurb and reading an excerpt on my website, right? So the marketing tactic that I think is the simplest to explain is just having a funnel, right? I think every author should have a funnel, which is you basically guide the reader to the next step until they get to your book. So you have to have an eye-catching cover, right? You have to have a good blurb. You have to have somewhere where people can sample your writing for free. That's easy, basically. Or something like a free novella. And then, eventually they put that all together and they decide to read your book or not. So, and Alan, I tell him this every time. I tell him he fell into my trap, because he went through like every one of those stages. He said he liked the cover. He read the description. He knew nothing about me. He went onto my website. He read like the first 3 chapters that I think I had on my website at the time, and then he decided to download it on NetGalley. He didn't spend anything. So that's just an example of the steps that readers need to go through, even when a book is free for them, right? Because time is also a big thing that people need to dedicate to you, right? So it's not only, they have to buy your book. Their time is super important. So if we're talking about tactics, I think you need to be intentional about that, right? And the cover is the first thing. And the cover can't be just something that you think looks cool. It has to be intentional. It has to pull people in, and has to send a message, and it has to get people to want to open the book, right? Good cover and a good piece of art are very different things. They can be both, but a good piece of art isn't necessarily a good cover.
And I would say to that end as well, that not only does it have to be intentional, but it also has to feel in line with your book. Because if you have a cover that is just the most grimdark thing in the world, and then you write a cozy fantasy, you're going to get a lot of reviews that do not agree. They don't like your book because they're looking for the thing that you promised them. So your cover is a promise, and you need to fulfill that promise. So if you have something that's dark and ominous, your book has to have those tones. If you have something that's light and breezy, your book has to have those tones. If it feels like a cover that looks exactly like a Will Wright cover, then it should probably have some of those tones that you'd find in a real Will Wright book, because you're telling that's your first piece of communication about what this book is going to be. So don't confuse your readers by having something that is selling them something false.
So I'm going to give you an example, right? You look at my book. It's called Touch of Light. I read a review yesterday that said, no light, only sadness. So yeah, maybe. If you read the book, you'll understand why it's called A Touch of Light, because it's only a touch. It's not a lot of light. But you look at it, you see the first thing that draws your eye is the color, right? It's this red-orange tree. right? But it isn't all red orange, which is something really important that you need on your cover to draw readers' eyes. It's contrast. And that's why there was like a time where white covers started popping up, and every single cover was just white, because it's easier to contrast with all the dark covers on Amazon because you're looking at it through a thumbnail, right? You're not looking at a big cover. So first thing, you have to have contrast. That's what draws the eye. But then what's the message that this cover gives you, right? There's a little bit of light streaming into behind. I try to make it look like a church to say religion, right? My book has religion. But if you keep looking, you'll see that the tree is kind of dying, or maybe it's healing the land. You don't know. It's a mystery. So there is kind of mystery in my book, right? You don't know that. If you look down here, you'll see that kind of there's like death, right? This is death. This is life. It's the duality of life and death. So when I built my cover, I thought about all these things. I didn't just say, draw me a pretty tree that's going to, call people in. I thought about the messaging behind what I wanted to tell people what's inside my book when they look at my cover. And then you have the sword, which just says fantasy, right? There's going to be, fighting, war, whatever. So you need to think about it in those terms. You need to think about what is the message that you want to give to your readers. And I mean, not everyone's going to have the same, interpretation of my cover, but that's what I did to maybe if people pick up on one or two of those things, maybe they'll want to open the book and read it. So that's what people mean when they say, a good piece of art isn't a good cover. And I'm not even talking about the design and the visual and, focal point, how you guide people's eyes through the cover so that they see everything. And then they have to kind of end here so that they want to open your book. Beams of light going this way, not that way, for example, that they want to open your book. And see, orange pop. In the end, there's a whole, there's a lot to cover, and there's a lot, there are like very, very deep rabbit holes that you should go down before starting to do your art direction, basically, because as a self-pub author, you are an art director for your cover. So don't just ask for whatever, be intentional about it.
I love how Jago took that little bite to be like, let me hold my book in front of the screen for 30 seconds to a minute.
I mean,
this isn't an
Chris,
advertisement.
Hey, Kate.
I mean,
he asked for
I
you
like
to change,
using.
and that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
I like using my stuff as examples because I know the thought that went into it. That's the only reason.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, you want me to do it with another one?
No, that's
I'll grab
fine.
another one.
How quickly can you analyze just a random book cover?
I mean, the ones that I like, I really look into, and after I read the story, especially, I keep looking at them because I have all my covers ready for this series, but I'm gonna have to have more covers for future series. So
that's why you have so few books on your bookshelf, because there's so few covers that you like.
Oh no, I have
Very
like
picky.
a ton. It goes up.
Okay.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
this is really.
And
Uh-oh.
It's kind of like
Boy,
Oh,
you
yeah.
have high ceilings.
It's very fancy.
Wow.
so there's always that saying of you don't judge a book by its cover, but it
Oh, you do.
happens all the time. We do. We definitely do.
That saying only applies to everything but a book. Like, you're not supposed to judge a person by their exterior and things like it applies to everything but a book, because that's always the first thing we judge a book by.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And Andrew, what about you? Have you done cover reveals? How did they go for you?
The only real big cover reveal was Foursquare, which you were involved with, Katie. Okay. Katie. Okay. There were so many Katies in the forum last night.
I'm gonna take that personally.
Yeah. So it helped a lot. What?
You just lost a star from
That's
Kay.
fine. I can afford that. It helped. I don't know that it wasn't explosive, but it helps on the TBR and on Goodreads for once you start getting that number up, which is nice because we're all obsessed with all the little numbers. I have them like memorized every day, and I open up Goodreads in the morning and check and see what's changed, and then
All right. Oh yeah, go
Cover
ahead.
reveals are a very, very good way to get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
Because it's the easiest way to draw people in. The cover is usually the first way that you'll draw the person, the reader.
And if you're a good practice, if you have good practice in interacting with people, strangers, on Twitter, you can draw some new fans right away without before they even read a book. You know, you get enough people sharing it who reshare it, and one person goes, "Oh, that cover's so cool," and you immediately react like, oh, "The author's talking to me." You know, you're just doing what you normally do with everybody, but they don't know that because they have not met you yet. So it's a chance for you to be respectful and polite to new people too. And then you get a new follower and you follow them back and say, "Thank you for the follow. And you interacted with me. Thank you." You know, it's not difficult to be nice. And so that it provides a lot of seed opportunities to interact with people.
I would go back a question, and what would I do differently along with cover reveal? You know, I can't disconnect cover reveal from how it impacted my arcs because they happened at the exact same time.
Yeah.
So I think they 100% had a lot to do with that that boom in arcs requests at the front. But I also didn't know what went into a cover reveal. I didn't know that you could use more than one person and more than one blog to reveal a cover. I thought it had to be an exclusive thing. I didn't know how to ask people. So I asked my proofreader, who happened to be Tori Gross, and was, you know, did her thing with a reveal on Fanfi Addict, and that was great. But I didn't know that I could also reach out to YouTubers, and I could also reach out to other reviewers, and I could get my cover in more places at once. So that's something I would do different, is put it out everywhere I could.
The
Depends on the blog.
exclusive, yeah, the exclusive reveal is something interesting. I didn't have a lot of experience with that, and for my second book, I reached out to everyone, just because I wanted to, you know, get the word out there.
Plus,
And I found that, yeah, I love that cover. I'm not gonna hold it up, okay? But I found that a lot of people everyone's super cool, super nice about it, and everyone, you know, just super happy to do it. But some people kind of try to help me and give me some feedback on, you know, sometimes people prefer exclusive reviews because, you know, if another person already tweeted it, then should I retweet their tweet? My review kind of loses a bit of air. My reveal kind of loses a bit of air, right? And they didn't tell me that, but I got enough feedback when I was chatting to people about, you know, how did you think it went, blah, 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 that I kind of realized that. So I'm kind of rethinking my strategy for book 3. Book 3, I'm going to do an exclusive. I'm going to see how that goes, and then I'm going to decide what I'm going to do with book 4.
So I will just say, for 3-4 days, my entire Twitter feed was just Shade of Madness covers.
Yeah.
So I mean, it worked.
That was the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for anyone watching, if you have any final questions you want to throw at our authors here, feel free to do that now. I think the biggest takeaway from all of this is etiquette, and remember, everyone has lives. As much
Yeah.
as you know, want people to read your book, it will come with time. Patience is important, but definitely being respectful goes a long way.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. That's a message to take away from here. It's like, you're talking to people, you're not talking to bots. Be respectful, understand that they have lives, and yes, they do have stuff that's more important than your book. So you know,
And to
if they
that
read it,
end-
great. If they don't, it's fine as well.
And to that end, there are also people that shouldn't be scary to reach out to. You know, they may say no, but they're not gonna hate you forever because you asked, unless you ask in an impolite way, like, read my book, it's the best thing you'll ever read. If you don't, I hate you. That's probably not the best opening line.
No, that might not push anything very far.
I'll say be ready for people to not like it as well. You know, you don't have to, oh, I'm not your friend anymore, because it's not personal. Reading is subjective, you know. If the person gave an honest review, respectful, didn't like say anything personal or was, you know,
I have authors I'm
to
friends with.
the
I will
author's
not read their
perspective.
books, but do they know that? Some of them don't, and I don't care. It's fine, we're good friends, and I'm not going to ruin it by.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's totally fine. I mean,
Yeah.
as a reviewer, if you don't want to tell someone you didn't like that book, that's fine, because you don't know how people are going to react. That's totally valid. But as an author, if someone didn't like my book, it's cool. It's not personal, and you need to remember, if you're going to make a career out of this, you are going to write more books. Maybe one of your books is going to hit with that reviewer in the future. So don't burn bridges.
All right. And with that, be sure to check out everyone's links in the description below. The blog that I had mentioned from James is down there as well, if you'd like to read that in more detail. Thank you all so much for your time, your insights, your, I'm going to say it, expertise. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone in the chat as well for joining us, and your insights and questions too. Have a good night, everyone. And as always, take care of yourselves.
Thank you for having us.
I think.